Thanks so much for doing this. Armenia is famous, to the extent it's famous. Armenians are famous for, being successful in business and quite cohesive as a community and very sincerely Christian, observant. But probably they're most famous for being exterminated by the Ottoman Turks at the end of the First World War, the Armenian genocide. And I think most people don't fully appreciate the extent to which that was religious persecution. That was a religious genocide, and they were murdered because they were Christians. Tell us how we know that.
Yeah. At the end of the rule of Ottoman Empire,
yes,
after Balkan Wars, Ottoman Turks saw that some Balkan countries like Bulgaria and part of Greece became independent, and the Christian countries in Balkans became independent. After that, they felt some, big risk in Christian population of Ottoman Empire, like Armenians, Pontus Greeks, became independent.
Yes.
And they started to persecute the Christian population of Ottoman Empire or to convert them to Islam. How it went on. When the war started between Entente and Ottoman Empire, Germany and Austro-Hungary, the Ottoman army came to all villages of Armenians in Ottoman Empire and asked two questions, just the villagers or the people who lived in towns. The first question was, will you convert to Islam? Like 98% of the Armenian population of Ottoman Empire denied.
Said no.
And the second question is, if you don't convert to Islam, you will go from here to desert of Deir Zor. It's like 800 kilometers, 600 kilometers from Armenian highlands. And all the men were killed and all the women were taken with children to desert of Deir Zor, and we have lost the 70% of the population of our nation because everyone, 1.5 million people, said no to converting to another religion. We want everyone to know about this story, not just about the dark side of the history. It has a bright message too, that
yes,
Christian in the 20th century were very, they went in a way of Christ and they were sacrificed. And we hope all this sacrificial will bring the Christians of our days to more faith, to that what we have, the biggest and most humanistic religion that we accept and we must live with it.
So I did not understand until we just had breakfast
Yes.
that the victims of the Armenian genocide,
Yeah.
who've been talked about a lot,
Yeah.
there's been a debate in the Congress for many years whether we can call it a genocide, whether that's somehow trademarked, but it was a genocide. But I didn't understand that they were Christian martyrs. They died not because of their ethnicity, but because of their religious faith.
There were no any problem with ethnicity. There were Armenians, like 2% of Armenians in Ottoman Empire were Muslim. And just these 2% are living till now in the north of Ottoman Empire without any trouble.
Interesting.
The other 98%, every Christian Armenian who were asked this question, who answered that he will not convert to Islam, were killed.
That's amazing.
And
so that kind of defines 20th century, 21st century Armenian culture. We stood steadfast in our faith and were murdered for it. So Christianity is at the center of Armenian culture. Is that fair to say?
It's the first nation who has ever converted to Christian in 301 was an Armenian kingdom. So in 301...
Before Constantine, before the Roman Empire.
11 years before Constantine, before Medieval Edict, it was 312, I guess. Armenia, like 11 years before, Armenian king Tirdat III converted to Christian religion and convert all our population to Christian religion. And we are the eldest Christian nation in the world. That's why our church and our identity are so already, it's the same thing, you know, the 80% or 70% of our identity comes from Christian values and our church, values of our church.
Well, that's fascinating. And it's, I mean, the state of California, where I'm originally from, you know, the Armenian community is very extremely successful, but very cohesive. Like they have a sense of themselves in a great way, I think. And that's why, obviously. So, you know, over the past 30 years, Armenia has been involved in a number of conflicts, really a sort of long-running sporadic war with Azerbaijan, which is an Islamic country.
Yes.
How many Armenians were killed in that war?
Almost 20,000 people were killed for defending a Christian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. Yep. And at the end of the war, the last war, the Christian population of Nagorno-Karabakh everyone came to Armenia. And now, after 2,000 years of living in this region, there is no any Christian in region of Nagorno-Karabakh. So
there are none?
There is no any.
What I don't understand is why nobody said anything as that was going on, and why Christian leaders in the West didn't say anything while that was going on, that I heard.
I think it's a matter of real politics, you know, real politics. We have allies with, we have a very close relationship with Greek nation, with Greece. We have close relationship with Cyprus. But even from there, we felt that we had support, but not, the support was just with words, not any actions. I know that real politics and help of Turkey to Azerbaijan make the many countries that were allies with us or were in a good relationship with us to avoid
they didn't want to get crossways with powerful countries like Turkey. I understand that.
And this is what we have, this is the problem we face all over our history, because the Armenian nation is in the center of a region where Turkey, Azerbaijan, Iran, and the only Christian nation of this from these three countries. And always we had this oppression from the empires like Ottoman Empire, there is Qajar Empire and other empires. And the only thing made us to be united and to save our culture was the church and education from the church.
Yes.
The schools that church was built all over the country to educate us to be Christian and to be an Armenian Christian.
Streaming November 16th on Paramount Plus, it is the return of Landman, a product of the co-creator of Yellowstone, this show's television's biggest phenomenon, and for good reason. Academy Award winner Billy Bob Thornton is back as Tommy Norris and managing higher stakes than ever before, featuring a loaded cast, including Academy Award nominees Demi Moore, Andy Garcia, Sam Elliott. Landman is pretty exciting for a TV show, honestly. In the wake of his former boss's passing, tensions come to a head as Tommy and Demi Moore's Cammie Miller struggle to maintain control of MTEX Oil, the company at the center of the drama. And with his father coming back into his life, Tommy must juggle both his role as an oil man and a family man as worlds collide. A familiar story, but never better told than in this hit series. A lot of people are watching this, and for good reason. Landman, new season streaming November 16th, only on Paramount Plus. I was and remain confused by the role of Israel in this war, Azerbaijan, Islamic nation versus Armenia, Christian nation, and the cleansing of Christians for Nagorno-Karabakh, that the region you just mentioned, Israel took a very aggressive position on the side of Azerbaijan against the Christians using American tax dollars to do it. So Israel was a participant in this war?
The participation in Israel was the support of Azerbaijan by weapon. And it was a part of real politics. But you know the problem?
What kind of weapons?
Drones, like aircraft and other. It's like not just defense, and attack
but offensive weapons.
Offensive
Azerbaijan received from Israel.
And the drones, many of the were operated by, as we have read in media, by operators from these companies, of Israeli companies.
Wow. So you think there were Israeli drone operators?
Yeah. Because as many media told, like it was in many magazines, and that. So
that would mean that Israelis were killing Christians in this war with U.S. tax dollars. I mean, because the Israeli defense sector is supported billions and billions a year by the United States.
You know, the issue is about the real politics. They are getting gas from Azerbaijan. Gasoline. They buy gasoline. I think the 70% of Israel gasoline is coming from Azerbaijan, and they have some type of economic ally. They are allies economically. The main issue is today, real politics sometimes is like make a big problem for the nations who wants to defend themselves alone. In the regions, we are minority.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and that's how the world works. I just suppose from an American perspective, it's like, why are my tax dollars being used to murder Christians around the world, cleanse the Christians from Iraq, cleanse the Christians from Nagorno-Karabakh, murder Armenian Christians? Like, why am I paying for this?
It is a problem. It is a problem
for me.
Yeah.
So now you have a lull in the fighting with Azerbaijan, but you have a prime minister of Armenia who seems to be intent on destroying traditional Christianity or the church. Tell me what this is.
Yeah. After last 2-3 years, after losing the war in Nagorno-Karabakh, and after making all the people, Christians from Nagorno-Karabakh, have moved to Armenia, our new prime minister decides to have a better relationship with Azerbaijan. Better relationship with everyone is always welcomed by Armenian society. Yes. We are okay with this. But what we feel that Turkey or Azerbaijan had a mission, made him to change the narratives of the church. And he wants to change the narratives of the church to forget the issue of genocide, forget our history. And our prime minister, 6 months ago, he started attack Armenian church and head of Armenian church. He wants to dethrone him, and he wants to change the structure of Armenian church that is 1,700 years old. Because of taking control of the church, it's the main institution in our country. 90%, 95% of our population are the members of Armenian Apostolic Church. And when he started to attack against the church, our society was shocked because nobody have done it before him, even, just at Ottoman time. And many people in Armenian society, they were against it, but they couldn't say anything.
Why?
Because they were afraid of some oppression from government side. Armenian is a democratic country. I think it's one of the last democratic countries in this region. In the last 30 years, we have elections, we have new leaders. It's not an authoritarian country. But this prime minister evolves from democratic leader. Every year we see he's changing to more authoritarian style of ruling because of a decreasing of his reputation in Armenia. And now he attacked the church. he took to prison 3 archbishops.
He put archbishops in prison?
Yeah, archbishop. For you to understand, it's not shock. Why? The one of archbishop were took to prison because 4 years ago in an interview, he said that this prime minister must be changed. The second archbishop was in prison, was taken to prison because of 3 years ago or 5 years ago, he went to a protest against the prime minister. And it's, and nobody from influential part of Armenian society, everyone were afraid of to talk about this.
Yeah.
Everyone could talk who hadn't a business, who hadn't an influence, but influential part didn't want to do it. And the one man who started talk about this was my uncle, Samuel Karapetian. He is one of the wealthiest Armenian in the world. So, and biggest Armenian philanthropist of last 15 years. 15 years, he is the biggest philanthropist in Armenia. So very many hospitals, kindergartens, schools. And when he came to Armenia, he lives out of Armenia. He came to Armenia and at the 40 days of his father's grave, And we have a tradition to go to church at liturgy in 40 days of someone's grave.
Good for you. So when someone dies, an Armenian dies, the family mourns for 40 days.
Yeah. And goes to liturgy. And when he came to Armenia and he was in liturgy, after Mass in the church, the journalist came to him and say, what do you think about the attacks from the side of government, attacks against the church? And he said, it was 37 seconds. What can I think if a small group of people forgetting Armenian history, forgetting history of our church, is attacking Armenian church and Armenian people? If the politician will not handle the situation, we will take part of handling it by ourselves, our way.
Good.
It was 37 seconds. Do you know what's going on after it?
What happened?
After 30 minutes of this interview, our prime minister posted in Facebook that this philanthropist must shut his mouth. After 3 hours, he sent police special forces to a residence of Samuel Karapetian, who is the most famous philanthropist of the country, And everyone were shocked. We were shocked too. And these police forces came to his residence without a judge order. Armenia is a democratic country. We never saw something like this. And everything was going on was cameras showed everything. So everyone knows that he said it 37 seconds. Then the prime minister was in parliament. He posted something like this in Facebook. And policemen came to the residence of Samuel Karapetian. But what happened then? The demonstrators came to the residence of Samuel Karapetian to defend him. Thousands of people came to his house to defend him from police. And that day, usually when police come, it's 5 minutes to take someone to jail, to police station. It was 14 hours. Demonstrators didn't want to let him to go to police station. And they were bring order of judge, we'll let. The demonstrators told the policeman. And then he decided to go himself to police station to not cause a clash between policemen and demonstrators. And after that, he was arrested, and I was arrested too. And my father, his brother, was arrested.
What were you arrested for?
I don't know. And
just being his nephew?
Just being there, I don't know. And I remember we were in police station 8 hours, and they were looking for an article to charge because there is no article in 37 seconds. I remember investigator came to the room and say, "Oh, I found one article," and then the other said, "No, it doesn't work." And after 7 hours, they found an article and charged it that he said that the prime minister must be dethroned. But in this 37-second interview, you can watch it in YouTube. It's everyone can do it. There were no any word about non-prime minister and no anything. And he is now in jail. They took him to jail 5 months. And the jail name, do you know what is the jail name?
No.
KGB basement. So there is that old Soviet time, communist time prison where the communists send the people who were not agree with communist ideas. And he's there in 12 square meters for defending the church. And for this 37 seconds.
He's still in jail.
He's still in jail.
Well, Grand Canyon University is not like most American colleges. It focuses on the things that actually matter. It is not a ripoff. It is the real thing. It's private, affordable, Christian university located in the heart of Phoenix, one of the largest universities in the country, actually. At Grand Canyon University, education is more than academics. It is about opportunity, the chance for every student to live out the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rights are not given by the government. They were bestowed at birth, at conception, by God. That's just a fact. And Grand Canyon University is not going to lie to your kids and claim otherwise. It tells the truth. So you're thinking, a quality education is rare, so this probably costs a fortune. Colleges constantly jack up their costs. They probably do the same. Well, they don't, actually. GCU has maintained the same tuition for 17 straight years. They're not in education to get rich at the expense of students. The whole thing is actually about learning. How refreshing. With flexible online classes, hybrid learning options, GCU offers 340 academic programs. Students benefit from a collaborative learning environment, dedicated faculty, personalized support to help them achieve their goals. The pursuit to serve is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. GCU.edu. So this prime minister, who's clearly authoritarian by definition, is against the church. So the idea is to break the back of Orthodox Christianity of traditional Christianity in Armenia and to use the police to do it. Is this popular? Do people like this?
It's very unpopular. 90% of the population is against that. And population, our society doesn't understand why he's doing that.
So his agenda, so Armenia is a traditional country, traditional families predominate. I noticed that the prime minister's wife was interviewed and said something to the effect that women in traditional families are all unhappy.
Yeah. He wants to change the society, but with power, not with soft power.
But the way he wants to change the society is very familiar to Americans. He is focusing on transgenderism as a good thing, LGBTQ agenda, whatever that is.
Anti-traditionalism, so not to the traditional families, like you mustn't care about your son. He must decide what to do. But if you want
what to do, whether to become a woman or have sex with men or whatever.
No, he hadn't said something like this, but mostly he's against the traditional values. So everyone knows that he has idea of changing our society, but
to make it less Christian.
To make it less Christian, yeah, I guess, yes.
Who's supporting him in this? This has happened in every country in the West, almost every country in the West, with varying degrees of success. But who's behind that? Who's pushing this?
Who is behind that in every country in the West?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is the same people who is doing it in Armenia? They are doing it here too, I guess.
Oh, they've been extremely successful. I mean, they've destroyed, our social fabric with this. But who are those people? Let's just stick with Armenia. Who's supporting this prime minister? The population doesn't support him. Who is?
I think the main issue when we thought why he is doing it against the church, we think that he gets some information from Turkey and Azerbaijan that you must change the narrative of the church to forget the genocide and to have a new head of church for going to a peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan and we feel that he wants to change the head of church then he will change the narrative of the church and to make our people to forget all our ancestors have done for our Christian religion and for being an Armenian. And this is the thing that we must, show our societies that this is the way they work. They want to destroy all the historical truth for some reasons. The reason is to be in peace, but we can't. We are very welcome to be in peace. But these people, 1.5 million people, were killed already. They were killed for their religion. The Ottoman Empire must accept it. The Ottoman Turks must accept it because after that we will live in a more peaceful region.
Anyone who's forcing you to lie about history is your enemy. And of course, the purpose is always to maintain power, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoever controls the story, the past, controls the future, of course. That's why Wikipedia exists, to lie to us about the past. So, last question. This is, by any definition, a grotesque human rights violation. You're arresting Christian clergy because you don't like their theological views and you don't like their views of history, so you throw them in prison. How many Christian churches in the West have weighed in on this, have supported the clergy under arrest, have put pressure on the Armenian prime minister to stop arresting Christian clergy? How much support are you getting from the West?
We are getting support from the West, from the churches.
You are?
Good. Yeah. There is a huge support, and we are appreciated for this. And I want to tell you one more thing, why these people are brave when they are going against the government's ideas. My uncle Samuel Karapetyan and the clergy, they could be realized tomorrow if they say that they will not defend the church.
It's always the same story, isn't it? Yeah.
So my uncle, we had they want to confiscate his businesses in Armenia. He knows it, but he wants to defend the church after that too. So he's continuing to defend the church. And this is the idea. These are the persons with whom we must learn something, because it's in 20th century when these Armenian, our ancestors were sacrificed in Ottoman Empire for their religion. I am proud that Samuel Karapetyan can be free, he can be with his business, but he doesn't do this for his religion, because religion and faith matters, it's important. Like the first Christian in first century, they were oppressed, but they fought for their religion. And this is the case Samuel Karapetyan faces now.
It's inspiring to watch. It's upsetting to watch at the same time. So, Godspeed. Thank you for telling us that story. Too few people know, and it's not just about Armenia. Of course, it's a global push.
Yeah. Against
this one specific religion, against Jesus. So that's what they hate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. How often do you give a present to a loved one that deep down you know that person despises or will never use anyway? It's happened, of course. So it feels good to check the box and cross them off the list, but wouldn't you feel better if you given them something they actually loved? Yeah. Cozy Earth could be the solution for you. Anyone who gets Cozy Earth's bamboo pajamas, which are not stiff and wooden, they're actually soft and awesome. Anyone who gets those is going to be psyched. Soft, lightweight, cool to the touch, bamboo pajamas. Cozy Earth offers that rare mix of cozy and breathable, so you're always comfortable. You don't overheat. They make blankets the same way. Plush, textured, ridiculously soft, next-level blankets. If you don't believe it, Cozy Earth backs its bedding and bath products with a 100-night sleep trial and 10-year warranty. For pajamas, who puts a 10-year warranty on pajamas? Not a lot of companies. Cozy Earth does. Black Friday is here early at CozyEarth.com. Use the code Tucker on top of their site-wide sale for up to 40% off for big savings before the holidays. Visit CozyEarth.com. Use the code Tucker and give gifts that people actually love. And if you get a post-purchase survey, don't forget to mention you heard about them from this show. Bob Amsterdam, as always, one of the people that I talk to most off camera about what is happening to the Christian population of the world. It's kind of amazing. Thank you for doing this. So, the situation in Armenia, the government of Armenia persecuting the church. How is this happening without more international comment?
Look, Tucker, as you and I have discussed, I do not understand the evangelical movement, the Christian movement in the United States. One thing I want to say, and I won't make many friends by saying it, in the United States, Christianity has been subsumed by the State Department. The U.S. government decides what Christians we support and what Christians we don't. So in Armenia, there is going to be a prayer breakfast. And I want you to understand, there's going to be a prayer breakfast while my client, Samuel Karapetyan, is in jail. Archbishops have been jailed. Clerics have been jailed. The leader of the country is trying to split the church by going to services of a defrocked priest. A man who has said he is going to remove the leader of the church. This man is being feted by American Christians in Yerevan, Armenia. A man who calls clerics prostitutes. A man who uses language that, at my advanced age, I've never heard a leader use against leaders of the church. And yet, shockingly, this prayer breakfast is going to go on. And I call it a reputation laundering breakfast. The U.S. government allows this to go on. And
what connection is there between the U.S. State Department and the prayer breakfast?
Look, I can't exactly tell you. I'm not privy to the arrangements. But as I've seen in representing the Ukrainian church, the prayer breakfast and religious freedom all seem to follow a script outlined by the State Department. And, there's a lot of pressure from the administration on peace in terms of Armenia and Azerbaijan, which, of course, all of us welcome. But it's happened at a tremendous cost to the people of Armenia. There's tremendous cultural and church relics that are being lost and defiled. There's 120,000 who have been cleansed from Azerbaijan, and no thought has been given to this. We have 23 Christian hostages in Baku, and the prime minister of Armenia did not even speak of them when he was with President Trump. President Trump raised them. I mean, it is shocking how Armenia has a prime minister who seems to resent his own history as an Armenian. They've taken Mount Ararat off stamps. They don't talk about the genocide. They attack the church. The leader of the country wants to remove and appoint the Catholicos. Well, of course, he doesn't understand what an apostolic church is. To be an apostolic church, listen to this Jew tell you about apostolic churches, you have to have a connection to the first apostles, which means your election must be sanctified by bishops, by leaders of the church, not a political figure. He is shockingly ignorant of his own religion.
It sounds like it's not his religion. I mean, it sounds like he's not a believer.
Well, I never will say that about someone.
Right, I agree.
I don't know him, but what I will tell you is our State Department has lost the meaning of faith. They have instrumentalized religion as a tool of foreign policy, exactly what we accuse the Russians of doing. We have done it. Thank God our people don't bless tanks the way Bishop Kirill did in Russia. But this support of governments, and we're seeing it in this prayer breakfast, traveling to a country like Armenia with top leaders of the Christian religion in particular, and doing all of this while we have clerics and I have a client in jail. And I feel very personal about this because I was able to defend this client in an Armenian court. I want to thank the Armenian bar for allowing me to actually speak in defense of the client directly with an interpreter. I was able to deal with the court myself, and I thought effectively portray the absolute farce that this trial was and that these charges were with respect to Samuel Karpetian, who is an absolutely unbelievably principled Christian who is now sitting in his 5th month in jail, innocent of everything other than praising God. And that's why he's in jail.
I know I've asked you this before, maybe not as pointedly as I will now, but how did this fall to you? How did you, I think, grew up pretty liberal or left-wing Jewish guy, wind up being like one of the world's foremost defenders of persecuted Christians? Like, how did that happen?
Well, firstly, as a Jew, I am an inclusive person. If somebody has faith in God, almost any God, I respect that.
I feel the same way.
And I was raised by a family that was deeply impacted by the Holocaust. I have traveled all my life. I have sought refuge during riots or whatnot, whether it be in churches or mosques. I just never feel proprietary and feel that all men of faith have a commonality to it. I've been involved with the Orthodox Church since I was a young man. We did a case against the Soviet Union, which a colleague of mine, Reg McLean, did the most of the work on, but Dean Peroff and I were young lawyers together, and he was a member of the Macedono-Bulgarian Orthodox Church, and I took on that case 45 years ago, trying to fight a Soviet attempt at taking control of a church. And since that time, I've always had an interest in these issues. And when, as you know, I was approached by the Ukrainian church and now by Karapetyan in the Armenian church context, it just seems very natural as a Jew to defend children of Christ.
So it's just an amazing story. Thank you, by the way, for doing it. So what is the latest? You have been the defender of the church in Ukraine, the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, which is under almost unbelievable persecution by the government with the help of the United States. Where are we now?
You know, I want to be very clear, Tucker. When you say persecution, that doesn't sum it up. I'm talking about torture. I'm talking about the theft of churches. I'm talking about...
This is not just we're cutting off funding.
No.
They're going to torture you.
I have pictures. I have videos. There's a trial going on in England where the Ukrainians are trying to ship back a former member of parliament of Ukraine whose crime was to speak out for the church. On the day they passed this horrendous bill to ban the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, a bill that I would say has no comparison in Europe since the Nuremberg laws.
Ugh.
When they passed this bill to ban this church, this man had the courage to stand up in the Rada, in their parliament, to denounce it. For that, Zelensky and Yermak pulled his security, knowing that his statements would be highly controversial and perhaps deadly. He realized that there was basically a death warrant. He fled the country on foot through a forest, made it to the UK. Within 14 days of arrival in the UK, they were trying to extradite him back to Ukraine for some hooliganism charge. And, you know, fortunate for him, I knew him. I knew when I had met him in Ukraine, when I had been there, that he had evidence of torture. We're now taking that evidence of torture to the courts. Ukraine is a one-party, one-person, autocratic state that has no comparison to any democratic values. Rather, today is a mirror of the old Soviet Union. The man in charge of religious affairs is an apparatchik who wrote an anti-Jewish screed 20 years ago. He's the head of religious affairs. And by the way...
Sorry to laugh. This is so crazy.
By the way, hold on. Let me go a step crazier. He was a keynote speaker at the Religious Freedom Conference held in Washington.
What?
Yes, his name is Zelensky. He was a keynote speaker. This is a man who spends his life trying to destroy the Orthodox Church and transfer it into what is essentially the OCU, a state church. He's a keynote speaker at a religious freedom conference in Washington, where there is a happy hour sponsored by the Ukrainian government, where there are men in Ukrainian army uniforms walking around.
This happened in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, a number of times. And this is all going on while I, on behalf of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, we can't get an interview in any press in the United States. Censorship exists in this country.
Yes.
And when we got any coverage, it wasn't to cover the outrage in Ukraine. It was to taint me as some form of Russian agent, a guy who was arrested by Putin, whose friends were murdered by Putin. I am tainted as some Russian agent for speaking out against this criminalization of Christianity that's going on in Ukraine. And by the way, supported by pastors who are very close to the White House. And I don't fault them.
Wait, it's supported by American pastors?
Yes.
How?
Yes. They don't know. I mean, essentially, the Ukrainians are masters of disinformation, absolute masters. They have their own sort of captive cells of religious leaders who are told essentially, look, we have, black PR against you if you don't follow what's going on and you don't support us. We'll take you down. I mean, the former president of Ukraine is under indictment for treason. Novinsky, who you've interviewed, under indictment for treason. They've done nothing treasonous. They just represent alternative areas of independent thinking. In Novinsky's case, a religious man who supported the church. But they have sanctioned him. They have tried to destroy him. And of course, they are within a hair's breadth of taking down the church, 1,000-year-old church, destroying it, taking the priests out of it, removing all the churches, transferring it to the state church of the OCU, which essentially is a cutout of the presidential administration.
It's hard to, so we first spoke maybe 2 years ago.
Yes.
And I was shocked by what you said at the time, which is the government of Zelensky is trying to eliminate traditional Christianity, the traditional church of Ukraine. And I thought, boy, when people find out about this, because whatever you think of Zelensky or Putin, certainly Putin, you can hate Putin and still be appalled by this, of course. I thought, wow, it's going to stop like that once people know. But it just kept accelerating. And I still haven't heard a single, I'm sure there have been, but I haven't heard any American Christian leaders say anything about this.
Look,
what is that?
I will tell you that J.D. Vance, when he was a senator,
yes,
and no one, frankly, knew him from Oshkosh, gave a statement in the Senate for which I thank him every day in my prayers, that has kept, I think it's one of the key things. I think you, J.D. Vance, and there are two young members of the Young Republicans, Catherine Whitford, who is a co-chair of the National Young Republicans and is Orthodox, is actually leading a day of action. And she has a colleague as well who is leading this. Those young people have been, along with our vice president now, the only sources of support we've had.
What about Franklin Graham?
He is speaking in Yerevan.
What does that mean?
He is the keynote at the prayer breakfast in Yerevan, Armenia.
With the prime minister who's putting clergy in jail?
Yes.
How does that work?
Listen, it may surprise you to know I am not working in evangelical circles. I have no idea.
I'm not either, but I'm very sympathetic to to evangelical people, great people, and I'm not against Franklin Graham, but I'm just shocked that Franklin Graham would.
I don't know, having certainly being aware of him, I have no idea if he knows. I think because our government has decided, as has the EU, frankly, that they are going to go with the SOB they know. I think the silence of the government is something that everybody takes as permission, and I'm sure Franklin Graham is not aware that archbishops
well, has Franklin?
are in jail.
You would think, and I don't mean to focus on Franklin Graham. I'm sure he's a nice person, or I really don't know what he's like, but I'm not against him. But has he said anything about what Zelensky's doing to the church in Ukraine that you're aware of?
No. I honestly am in shock at the silence of the media in the United States and the silence of the Christian community to what's happened. I mean, thanks to Candy Stroud, who you and I both know,
great person.
I've been on radio everywhere I can, but the Ukrainian effort in Washington and with the media is masterful. They have their own people in key media who continued to write puffy articles about them. Never a criticism. The first time it ever came up that I saw was the protests over corruption a few weeks ago, which led people here to scratch their head and say, well, Christ, if Zelensky is so clean, how could he be trying to wipe out the anti-corruption independence? And that was an eye-opener to some. But, in the UK, we wrote to the government to say, why aren't you doing something about the church? And they wrote back and said, everything's great.
Everything's great?
Everything's great. I mean, the UK government is more hardline about Ukraine than Ukraine. The reaction of Europeans, understand, Germany is imploding because of this war.
I know. It was obvious that it would. 4 years ago, it was obvious. The second it started to say, this is going to destroy Germany, which is really the economy of Europe.
And let's say something else. It's going to radicalize Germany.
Well, that is deep and true.
And that is scary.
That is what's coming. Of course.
And as a Jew, that is a very scary thing to witness.
But it's inevitable. It's going to radicalize all of Europe. I mean, how could it not? Yeah.
And I will say to you that the behavior of the press has been the most disappointing to me, because I've worked with the press when I was fighting Putin in the early 2000s on behalf of one of his key opponents. I had the press with me, and we would do interviews. It was constant. But now that Saint Zelensky is starting to show a few cracks in the visage, there's still nothing about this ongoing torture and use of secret police to destroy a church. Nothing.
What is that exactly? Why most Americans, including certainly most reporters, most people in the media, had never heard of Zelensky until this war started. They didn't know, they couldn't identify him. And immediately after it started, the loyalty to him, blinded them to his faults, induced them to lie to the public in America about what was happening. I mean, they just became shills for Zelensky in one day. Why? What is that?
Well, it's interesting because we did a study. We looked at media in the United States, because one of the things that's frightening about the churches that are being taken in Ukraine is that very often the people who take them and beat up parishioners and break the heads of priests, those people have swastikas on their arms.
Yeah, I noticed.
So we found out that the New York Times and other papers had been profiling the rise of the right in Ukraine right up until the war. Now, the Azov battalion, which is basically a neo-Nazi battalion, has almost taken over command and control in the Ukraine. And, this is an ultra-nationalist government right now that is pushing a very radical line, but no one is covering it.
But do you have any guesses as to, and I should say you've been in and out of that region for over 50 years, you know well, you know a lot. I mean, I could go on about your background, but I would just ask viewers to look you up or to take my word for it. You know what you're talking about. And what you're saying is true. But why would the media, again, do that? Why are they defending actual Nazis? Like, that's how deep their commitment is to Zelensky. So what is that? What is that commitment? Where does it come from?
Well, it's funny because Zelensky made all his money in Russia.
Yeah, I know.
And yet he's in charge of a government that's debasing any guarantees of language rights for Russian speakers inside Ukraine. And the sanctification of him relates in my mind to two things. One, we have a total breakdown in elite politics in Europe and to some extent in the United States.
Yes.
And secondly, I stopped playing the market when I was 21, but I certainly remember, making a bet and watching it crash and then think, I've got to double down to lower my cost in.
Exactly.
And I think that's what's kind of happened here.
I understand the first one. I mean, the second one, I think you're exactly right. Like, I was all in from the beginning. I can't get out now.
Yes.
Double down. And I sort of understand what you mean about the degradation of elite politics, but can you put a finer point on that?
Well, look at the UK. I mean, I love the UK.
Yes.
We have a government that is wildly incompetent. They even know they're incompetent. We're going to have a budget that's going to destroy what's left of the middle class. Look at France. Complete chaos right now. Complete loss of direction. Italy, struggling, but with Meloni, there's some sort of strength there. But many of the other countries, of course, Spain is now, you may not be aware, I'm fighting Spain in a big way against their tax administration. We just outed in a press conference last week the fact that Spain is using Huawei computers to store tax information for Americans.
Not really.
Yes. And not only are they doing that, but they have this discriminatory policy towards Americans. They have 50,000 Americans. They have hundreds of thousands of foreigners. They're doing discriminatory tax audits and basically stealing the money from foreigners to try to subsidize a government that is the most corrupt government I've seen since Papadoc Duvalier. I think something like 21 indictments, the prime minister's wife, his brother, the general prosecutor. I mean, what's going on in Spain is unexplored territory in the United States, and people don't seem to have any interest in finding
zero interest. It's a vacation spot.
And the king is flying to China because Sanchez is all in with China,
of course,
and Venezuela. So it's astounding. And the rule of law is under such attack there that the EU is quietly sending a commission to investigate in January because everybody in Europe knows rule of law is dead in Spain. So it's frightening what's going on there. And this is what I mean about the sort of calcification of the ruling elite.
So, but what is that? Is that just now I'm asking you, I'm luring you into philosophy, but I'm very interested in, I agree with everything you've said. It's observable, it's provable, but where does it come from? Is it a natural cycle or is it something else?
The cost of being a politician are so high, the reputational costs are so high, and the materialistic nature of all of us now, the loss of ideology, the loss of principles, the loss of faith. This leads to a loss in terms of the quality of people entering politics.
Yeah, that's right.
And you have a chaotic world situation, which, there's a lot of fear And it leads to a completely transactional foreign policy. And more states are engaging in this transactional policies as opposed to following any form of ideological policy.
So it sounds like a part of a cycle then, just as politics becomes less productive, therefore more reviled by the population. These are supposedly democratic countries, or not really, but they still have the skin suit, and people are mad at the political class. So that means that only the worst people join the political class.
Right. And yet fascinating what I'm seeing in watching the Orthodox community, the Christian Orthodox community, and the Jewish community. The Jewish community as a result of this horrible growth of anti-Semitism. The Orthodox community as a result of the woke nature of many Christian churches, is that those who are fundamental in their faith are growing. Orthodox Christianity is growing at a massive rate.
Oh, yeah.
Massive.
I'm sure Orthodox Judaism is too.
Yeah, because people are clinging to real values.
That's right.
And in Europe, quite frankly, it's very, very hard to find inspiration. In the United States, we have a president, by the way, I think probably the most effective president in foreign affairs that we may have had since Nixon. I think he's incredibly consequential in foreign affairs. On domestic policy, on legal issues, I think the rule of law is in trouble. But I won't go into that now.
I've noticed. No, I agree.
But foreign policy-wise, he's moved incredible mountains. And I'm not just talking about the recent activities with the hostages. I'm talking about as a lawyer engaged in Africa, the man has done more to open up our eyes to the opportunities in parts of Africa. He's made it much less risky to go into Africa. As an American in Africa over the last decades, you don't know how frustrating it is when the Department of Justice opens up investigations the minute American companies want to venture into Africa or into Latin America.
Yes.
And now that's not happening. And now American companies are going into some of the Wild West countries in Africa and Latin America. And I say, more power to them. Why would we just hand this to China? So
Congo, most obviously, but
yes,
others.
Yes.
Speaking of African countries, all of a sudden, I'm not defending Nigeria. I don't have strong views in Nigeria, but Nigeria has become famous in the last week as a country in which there's Christian persecution going on. I think there's been a lot of conflict between Muslims and Christians in Nigeria for, my whole life. But all of a sudden, it's a kind of centerpiece of the conversation. What is the truth? You've been in and out of Nigeria for how long?
50 years.
50 years. 1975. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's a long time. So you know Nigeria pretty well.
I do.
What is the truth about what's going on?
Well,
and I ask because you've got credibility. You know the country, and you're spending the rest of your life defending Christians around the world. Tell me what the actual truth of Christian persecution in Nigeria is.
Well, let's be very clear that the Nigerian government is populated by Christians and Muslims. Mm-hmm. I have represented in his earlier life the National Security Advisor of Nigeria when he was a young man, and he's a lovely individual, and caring and universally respected in terms of religious issues. Devout Muslim, but universally respected. In my adopted family in Lagos, mm-hmm. the Odesanya family sort of adopted me when I was a very, very young man, and living there. I sort of have a half brother there, Dapo Odesanya. That family is a totally integrated family, Muslim, Christian. I was always teased that I was a Yoruba, which is a Jewish Yoruba. But I mean, there have always been tribal conflict. I spoke to the foreign minister before I came here because I wanted to get clarity on the government's position. absolutely, let's be clear, President Tinubu's wife is a Christian pastor. This is not targeted at Christians. There are probably an equal or more number of Muslim deaths. I am grateful to President Trump for identifying these attacks on Christians. Believe it or not, you can blame some of this on the French, who had this.
I do. I know nothing about it, but I believe you anyway.
They had a massive force in the Sahel. They armed the Tuaregs, which are a notoriously aggressive tribal group. That arming has led to mass killings of Christians. The fact that when Libya blew apart, a massive amount of arms went down to Boko Haram can't be denied by anyone. Nigeria wants to consult with the United States. Nigeria wants assistance in protecting Christians and Muslims, protecting their populations. Nigeria feels it has not had a fair shake from Washington. And I'm not, I don't work for Nigeria. I'm not going to go on and on. The foreign minister is a close friend who I respect deeply. But I can tell you from my work, I was privileged to represent one of the Nigerian states years ago, Akwa Ibom. We won a case actually for them. The Nigerians would welcome American assistance with open arms. So this is unlike Ukraine, which is destroying its church, or Armenia, which is destroying its church. Here you have a government that wants to protect its populace, doesn't have the resources. Nobody's going to deny Nigeria's been racked by corruption all the years I've known it. But they want a new deal, a new relationship with Washington, and in part to assist them in protecting Christians. So when I read some of what I've been reading, I'm never going to say that Ted Cruz isn't a brilliant man. But I'm going to say I might have a little more time in Nigeria than he does. And I would welcome him to speak to the foreign minister or others. Because one thing America doesn't need are more enemies. Africa is the future. I have said it time and time again. I'm privileged to be counsel to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. My firm has spent many years. We're still trying to defend the opposition leader.